Hello and welcome. I'm Isha Khan, CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, and I'm happy to join you from the museum to launch the City of Winnipeg's Anti-Racism Week. J'aimerais avant tout reconnaître que le musée est sur des terres ancestrales, sur le territoire visé par le traité numéro 1. La vallée de la rivière Rouge est également le berceau du peuple métis. Nous reconnaissons aussi avec gratitude que l'eau du musée et partout à Winnipeg provient de la Première Nation Shoal Lake numéro 40. I'd like to start by acknowledging that the museum is located on ancestral lands on Treaty 1 territory. The Red River Valley is also the birthplace of the Métis. I would also like to acknowledge with gratitude that the water in the museum and throughout Winnipeg comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation. This is an important week. As a community, we have an opportunity here to reflect on where we are at and where we want to go together. Cette semaine est une semaine importante. En tant que communauté, nous avons l'occasion de réfléchir à notre situation actuelle et à nos objectifs communs. Each and every Winnipegger is responsible for doing their part to challenge racism. To do that, we have to start by acknowledging it. We have to do the work of listening to Indigenous people, Black people, and all people of color to even begin to appreciate the impact racism has in our community every day. We have to be willing to ask the tough questions of ourselves and those around us, and to be prepared to reflect on our own biases and prejudice. We have to follow through and consider the structures in place around us that perpetuate racism at a systemic level. And it is possible to change. We all know we can do more and do better. As a city and a community, bridging the gap between where we are and where we want to be depends on our willingness to really think about the kind of community we want to live in, which requires us to take responsibility for the kind of community we live in. It requires us to see racism and to challenge it every day. That's why this week is so important. If we work together and commit to acknowledging that there is still work to do to ensure we have equal opportunities, regardless of the color of our skin, our ancestry, our ethnic background, we will make a difference. And I'm so happy that each of you have taken the time to join us for the start of this week's activities. To open today's virtual gathering, it is my privilege to introduce Elder Clayton Sandy. Elder Sandy has lived in Winnipeg for 45 years, and his home community is the Sioux Valley Dakota First Nation.
Good afternoon. The beautiful place where we're standing right now is on Treaty 1 territory, land of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene, and homeland to the Métis Nation. And the clean water we drink comes from Shoal Lake number 40. Thank you. I was told by a colleague of mine, a friend colleague of mine, about 8 months ago, if our committee was fooling itself by thinking that we're going to eliminate racism in Winnipeg. I responded to him that if we don't do nothing, nothing changes. I told him that in my own life, if I didn't change, people around me wouldn't change, and so on. So I told him that I wouldn't mind to, what my long-term goal is to leave something for my children and my grandchildren that they can say I didn't try to make a difference. And that's the reason I'm part of this event, is to try and make a difference. I've called Winnipeg home. It's been home for 45 years now, and I love Winnipeg as a home. And I think probably all through my career, I've done my best to educate not only non-Indigenous people, but anyone that wants to listen. So that's the purpose of my journey. That was my journey. So now I'd like to just make my prayer for this event. Homitaki api, wakantaka hemiado ichaka homani. Wakantaka homaki aye wakantaka, unshakamaya do wakantaka, unshakamaya do wakantaka. Creator, I thank you for another beautiful day of life. I thank you for bringing us here today. I ask that you watch over us. I ask that you help us on this journey. I ask that you put in the minds of all Winnipeggers, Manitobans, that it's never too late to do the right thing. I ask that you watch over us always, help us on our journey to do the right thing, help us to educate people, help us to educate ourselves, help us to go through hard times and come out in a positive way to share something positive. I ask that you watch over ourselves, our families, our loved ones, our city. I ask that you bless the people that help put this together and the people out there watching. Homi takiawas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elder Sandy, for opening this event. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our Mayor, Brian Bowman, to share a few words with us. Welcome, Mayor Bowman.
Elders and knowledge keepers, community leaders, Winnipeggers from every neighborhood and every background, welcome. Bienvenue tout le monde. Today, we're here to launch Winnipeg's first ever Anti-Racism Week. Today, we're here to ask ourselves, what would Winnipeg look like without racism? This is a question we're going to try and answer together. Only together do we have the collective strength, knowledge, and determination we need to answer this question. The Honorable Murray Sinclair has said, and I quote, "Reconciliation is not a spectator sport. You have to become involved. You have to be engaged." Thanks to the leadership, commitment, and incredible hard work of our community partners, we have an opportunity this Anti-Racism Week. We have the chance to become truly involved and truly engaged in the crucial work of anti-racism. I know our city has a problem with racism, overt acts of racism, the kind that make the news, and the subtler forms of racism that many people are unaware of, and certainly systemic racism at every level of government and in our public institutions. All of these forms of racism inflict suffering. All of them eat away at people's hearts, minds, and souls. Knowledge keeper Clayton Sandy has said it well when he said simply, quote, "Racism prevents us from growing." And that's exactly what it does. It prevents us from growing personally, professionally, socially, economically, culturally, and in the final analysis as a community. I know that if we hope to eradicate racism, we first have to acknowledge it. And I know that every single one of us must stand up and speak out for what's right. I'm committed to this, and Winnipeg City Council is committed to this. I also know that because of my lived experience, I'm not the expert here. The real knowledge and insight we need to illuminate our efforts comes from the community, from the people and organizations who are already fighting racism every day. Many of them are here today sharing their vision of a racism-free Winnipeg. I'd like to thank all of these amazing speakers. Isha Khan, CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, who's graciously acting as MC today. Knowledge keeper Clayton Sandy, who set the tone for us with the treaty acknowledgement and his moving opening prayer. Perla Havade, chair of the Ethno-Cultural Council of Manitoba. Hani Alubaidi, director of Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, and Loretta Ross, Treaty Relations Commissioner of Manitoba. I want to thank all of the artists joining us today, enriching our reflections with music, poetry, and dance. I also want to thank the youth sharing their hopes and aspirations with us in the program. We're fortunate to have young filmmakers from Just TV here to make a video presentation, and Keenan from the Elmwood Community Resource Center to speak about their vision for tomorrow. Winnipeg's Anti-Racism Week is happening thanks to the leadership and hard work of our very committed partners, both on the steering committee and the working group. Immigration Partnership Winnipeg sit on both the steering committee and the working group and have been instrumental in developing this week's events. Knowledge keeper Clayton Sandy has provided connections to many local community partners, and his wisdom helped focus this week's objectives and activities. The Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba have been crucial partners on the steering committee and are developing a special treaty education series. The Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce has provided a vital link to Winnipeg's business community and a focus on the economic benefits of a healthy and respectful city. Elmwood Community Resource Center sat on the steering committee and provided invaluable input and guidance regarding the week's goals and programs. The Manitoba Association of Rights and Liberties developed and will be delivering the virtual cafe training sessions for public service staff. The City of Human Rights Education, the Hub, have linked us to the wider educational community concerned with advancing knowledge about human rights. And Black History Manitoba have shared their deep knowledge of historical and contemporary inequities imposed by racism in our society. These partners have worked so hard to make this week meaningful for us. They're truly involved, truly engaged, just as Murray Sinclair said we need to be. So this is my appeal to Winnipeggers this Anti-Racism Week. Please join us. Put up a sign, pick up a kite, or check out the stories being shared in the Human Library. Show your support for a Winnipeg without racism. It's time for racism to stop. It's time for every Winnipegger to be treated with respect, including and especially residents who are First Nations, Inuit, Métis, Black, racialized, and religious minorities. This is the future all of us deserve. Let's imagine it. Let's work on it. Let's do it together. Miigwech, merci, and thank you, everyone.
Hello, my name is Erin O'Kranick. Manitoba is made up of so many different cultures, and music has always brought those cultures together. I'm here with Bradley Longbottom, and we're going to share some of the wonderful fiddle styles for you.
Alexis Antoine. I'm a grade 12 student from Sioux Valley High School. I enjoy baking and spending time with my family. In 2014, when I was 13, I was chosen to go to camp in Alberta for about a week and a half. At the time, I didn't know much about racism because I never experienced it before. After a few days of being there, I made friends and everything was going well until I got homesick and had to stay back from the activity they had planned for the morning. Late in the afternoon, when I was able to go back to the cabin, I was told that another girl from my group had said Indigenous people are alcoholics and dirty. Me being young, I didn't think much of it. But I knew deep inside it was wrong of her to say that, and yet I still remained silent. It haunts me that I didn't speak up and educate her about Indigenous people. It's been 6 years since I last saw her, and I still hear those words today. I often wonder why she said something so terrible without knowing that addictions affect everyone from all different backgrounds. I wish I could have found the courage then to have a face-to-face conversation with her about what she had said that day. As I grew in experience and understanding, I was able to learn that what she did was stereotyping and undermining. We're humans that are being labeled because of what we look like or what we wear. Experiencing racism at any age can have a big effect on you, and in most cases, it hurts. But it's up to you and how you handle the situation. Indigenous people are some of the most hardworking and talented people I know. I, for one, will never be ashamed of my culture and beliefs regardless of what people have to say about it, because I know it's their way of tearing us down. Racism is talked about so often today because our ancestors weren't allowed to. If they spoke up about it, they were murdered. Today we have the rights and freedoms to amplify what our ancestors were trying to say. Educating people is a start, but take the next step and treat all people of color with respect and show acts of kindness. Never be silent on racism. If anything, you're brave and strong for speaking up. Continue raising your voices for the ones that can't, and always speak your truth. It's time for change.
Thank you very much, Mayor Bowman. Thank you, Aaron and Bradley, for that wonderful performance. And thank you, Alexis, who, by the way, is a grade 12 student from Sioux Valley School in Brandon. I also want to take a moment to thank the partners whose hard work and commitment made this week possible: Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba, the Elmwood Community Resource Centre, the Manitoba Association of Rights and Liberties, Human Rights Hub, and Black History Manitoba. Beyond this week, these organizations are in our community every day, doing the important work of helping build a stronger city for everyone, and we thank them very much. Now, I'd like to welcome Perla Havate, the Chair of the Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba. Welcome, Perla.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak on racism as we devote a week and focus on anti-racism activities. Like majority of immigrants, refugees, and visible minorities, I have not found my voice until now. This is my first time to speak on racism. Racism hurts. Racism strips a person of human dignity and self-respect. Racism tramples on a person's self-esteem and self-confidence. Racism divides people. Racism sows fear and hatred. Racism foments aggressiveness and violence. Racism kills. We Canadians are a peaceful, loving people. We do not want what racism does to us. The time to act is now. You and I and all of us have to put a stop to racism. We can do this if every single one of us will do our part. My name is Perla Havate, and I'm currently the co-chair of the Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba, Stronger Together Incorporated, a nonprofit, nonpartisan multicultural council composed of more than 20 ethnic communities representing immigrants, refugees, and visible minorities. We are the people who are vulnerable to be victims of racism because we originally came from another country, because of the color of our skin, because we speak another language and have different values and cultural practices and different faith. Most of us come from places ravaged by war and turmoil, of violence and abuses. We come from places where silence is the norm due to fear of authorities and further repercussions. We are aware of many cases of racism but are not reported. We cannot allow anyone to suffer in silence as victims of racism because everyone has to learn they have equal rights like everyone else in our country. The Council's role is to provide an empowering platform and collective voice so we can work together to make Manitoba a welcoming and inclusive province. Our journey as newcomers, immigrants, refugees, and visible minorities is long and hard and full of challenges. We left everything familiar, people we care about, the systems we understood, regardless of how worse the circumstances may have been. We understood everything then because there were no language and cultural barriers. We come to Canada to start a new life. We have to learn the language fast. We have to understand the different systems, education, politics, banking, human rights and employment rights, the do's and don'ts of our new country. We have to keep our eyes and ears open. Be aware of cultural cues at all times so our speech and actions conform with the norms of our new adopted country. The Ethnocultural Council strives to address these issues along with other immigrant-serving agencies to ensure smooth settlement, fast and facilitate sharing and learning of each other's culture to allow and develop an atmosphere of understanding, acceptance, and appreciation of each other's culture. We also address issues on women, youth, LGBTQs, seniors, people with disabilities, and Muslim community. We are also starting initiatives partnering with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. We live in a multicultural society. At its best, we are gifted with so many cultures that lends to a vibrant, colorful, and strong society. Let us nurture this. Let us embrace and respect each other for who we are. Only then can we realize a country and a world defined by peace and not chaos, by love and not hate. Let us all do our part. Let us say no to racism. Let us put a stop to racism.
Just TV is considered one of the most accredited and successful programs run out of the Broadway Neighborhood Center to date. Just TV has now been successful for over a decade, providing youth with multitude of opportunities in employment, resourcing, video production, and music production.
Just TV provides youth with opportunities to express themselves through multimedia in a safe, fun, creative environment. Participants engage in all facets of the audio and video industry and are tasked to make a video based on their interests, experiences, and lives. An annual showcase of all videos and projects is held at the end of the sessions for families and friends to enjoy.
In this video, we'll take a look at how racism has affected the youth in Winnipeg and what we can do to change that.
Through interviews, we take a look at their personal lives and see how their experiences have shaped who they are. Winnipeggers should not be defined by the color of their skin, the language they speak, nor the religion they choose to follow. Winnipeggers are united by our differences, our resilience to overcome challenges together, and the ability to endure our harsh winters and celebrate our sunny, beautiful summers. Winnipeggers show a willingness to help and invest in our communities, and to help our fellow neighbors in need. Look around and see the wonderful diversity our city has to offer. We embrace our diversity and know it makes our home a better place. We strive for inclusion rather than exclusion, but we have challenges to overcome. Back in 2015, Winnipeg was labeled the most racist city in Canada, and as Winnipeggers, we know that this isn't acceptable. We are making progress, but much still needs to be done. Our road to change lies with us, and our generation, who is more capable, more hopeful, more careful, and more caring. Qualities of which are crucial to reverse that stigma and generate a new headline: Winnipeg, the most inclusive city in Canada.
Well, whenever I have heard the stigmas or still hear the stigmas around my personal ethnicity, I tend to, well, not all the time, but I believe in some of the stigmas, and it makes me feel less of a person.
I think it has a negative impact on their upbringing, starting from when they're born until they're around their adolescent age where they're able to make their own choices.
A safe place for me is with my friends and with my family. They always make me feel really loved, and it doesn't matter where you come from when you're with them. It's just a place that's full of love.
My safe place where racism does not exist is where I call a place home or my community.
There has also been a few after-school programs I've been to, and I feel safe around them because they're more accepting compared to normal places, and I was able to find my voice in those places.
One of the biggest challenges, it's not the people, it's the idea. The idea of racism exists.
I think racism is taught within. I don't think that somebody just wakes up one day and they're like, oh, I'm racist. I think it starts right from the household that they're in.
I feel that we can eliminate racism the same way we've established racism. We've educated people on racism, but at the same time, we can educate people on not being racist.
For example, we have to kind of teach a lot about racism in high schools or younger age in elementaries. So it should be kind of mandatory and having different rules in the city.
But because there's more of us, I feel like the process is going to go by faster. It'll go by way faster if we all be an example.
I think that Winnipeg without racism would be one of the most beautiful places on earth because there's so many different cultures and experiences from throughout the world that we would be able to experience in our own city.
No, Winnipeg is the center of all of this because cultures from all over are in this one city alone.
Just be kind to each other and don't forget to smile.
Let's eliminate hate
and
make
Winnipeg feel like home to all.
Good afternoon. My name is Hani Al-Ta'an Al-Ubaidi. I am the Director of Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, a partner with the city and other partners from the community. We came together to start our Anti-Racism Week. It is an invitation for all people in Winnipeg to come together to identify pockets of racism, whether it is individual racism or a systemic racism. We need to start talking about it, and we need to work together to fight it collectively. This is an invitation for all of us to have hard conversations around racism and the impact of racism. Let us create a safe space for all of our people to ask hard questions, to have difficult conversations. It is a safe space that needs to be created for all of us. And newcomers that need to feel that they are at home. Host society is prepared to take on difficult questions related to the impact of racism. If there is a systemic racism, we need to show leadership to tackle those systemic racism and remove the barriers in terms of integration and settlement processes for the newly arrived people in this society. Also, we want to encourage others, youth, older, younger people, everyone should participate in this week and ask difficult questions. It is a space where we all belong to and feel empowered to have those difficult conversations. Racism, if it's left undealt with, can impact our society negatively and create divisions, create segregation that we cannot afford in near future. Together we can fight it, and together we started the work on anti-racism. Thank you.
Thank you, Perla, Just TV, and Hani, with an extra special thank you to Hani for his work on this week's organizing committee. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Loretta Ross, the Treaty Relations Commissioner of Manitoba, to deliver our keynote address today. Welcome, Loretta.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Clayton Sandy for the prayer and for starting this day in a good way. I want to acknowledge all of the speakers and participants in today's events for sharing their time and their gifts with us. I also want to extend my heartfelt thanks and appreciation to Elders Philip and Florence Painter for the pipe and water ceremony this afternoon. The pipe and water ceremony was done as a blessing for this week-long event, and to ask that we receive guidance as we take this opportunity to learn from each other and find ways of moving forward in a good and substantive way in our efforts to combat racism within our city. I also want to extend my congratulations to the City of Winnipeg for hosting this event. It is heartening to see that efforts are being made at a citywide level and done so in partnership with community stakeholders, staff, and leaders within the city. It is important that we set aside time, dedicated time, to learn and engage in dialogue and seek solutions to addressing racism at an individual level, but also racism that is systemic. The theme for this week is, what would Winnipeg look like without racism? Now let's think about that for a second. If we are at the point where we are asking ourselves this question, then we are also at the point of acknowledging that racism does exist. And if that is true, we have already moved beyond the hurdle of denial. The denial of the existence of a problem always prevents forward movement. So we've already removed one hurdle in the gigantic battle against racism. Now it's time for seeking solutions, for action to implement those solutions, and for commitment for maintaining and sustaining those solutions. But we also need to be able to revisit and monitor these solutions, because as time goes on, situations change, leadership changes, and so the solutions that we arrive at need not only be responsive and adaptive, but for the long term. As I was preparing my thoughts about what to share today, I had gone over the many negative events, statements, action, and inactions that have occurred over the years within our city, and even in recent times, all under the banner of racism. And we have had many inquiries, investigations that have occurred over the years, many of which have had very specific connections to the City of Winnipeg. And these inquiries serve as a testament to the acts of racism within our city. But I don't want to dwell too much on these events, except to remind us that they exist. They existed because people lost their lives to racism and society failed them. But these reports and investigations also provided us with some tools and solutions for moving forward and combating racism. So let us not forget, but let us learn from them so that their deaths were not lost in vain. Let them serve as our inspiration for moving forward. As Treaty Commissioner, I would, of course, be remiss if I didn't share a little bit about the treaties. And what I want to share is that when the First Nations people of this land first entered into treaties with the Crown, they did so on the basis that they would share this land and allow the new settlers to settle here, to bring their families, and to live a good life. Minopematisoin. Minopematisoin is an Anishinaabe word, and it means to live a good life. And it doesn't mean to live a high life or a rich life, monetarily speaking. It means to live a good and responsible life where we have enough so that we can enjoy and live in balance with nature and land, to have access to the resources so that we can make a good living and be able to provide for our families, to be able to enjoy our families, and to be able to practice our spirituality, our languages, and our cultures without fear of ridicule or persecution, to be able to live, work, and play without fear of danger or harm. It is simply to live a good life. But part of living a good life comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to ensure that your neighbor is also living a good life, that your neighbor also has access to those means that allow them to live a good life and to live a good life with their families. Because how can you truly live a good life when people around you are suffering? Suffering because they are treated differently simply because of their heritage, their race, their language, or their beliefs. So I was taught, when you get a gift, such as the gift that was given through the sharing of this land, it is expected that you will do something good with that gift. And that also you have now started a relationship as a result of that gift. A relationship between the giver of the gift and the recipient. And if we look back at the treaties, the gift that was given by the first peoples of this land, this opportunity to live Mino-Pimatisawan, to live a good life. So what has the recipients of that gift done with it? Have they used that gift in a good way? Have they used that gift in the way that it was given to allow for all to live Mino-Pimatisawan? If we look at the history of our city, the history of our province, and the history of our country, of Canada, we can see that we have definitely strayed from the principles and spirit within which that gift was given. We have also strayed from the responsibility found within Mino-Pimatisawan. And we have to understand that everything is connected. We are connected as human beings. We are connected to our lands and to nature, and so too are our institutions connected. We cannot begin to address racism by just focusing on one part. We have to look at all the pieces of our society. For many, focusing on the services or on the institutions are the primary starting points. And while I have no magic solutions for where to start, I do know that one place that we all can start is with ourselves. We can't always have the control or means to affect institutions or services, but we do have the means to control how we behave. Often our behavior is done out of sheer ignorance, but it is also done out of fear, out of anger, and of hate. Our behavior is often a reflection of what we know. So if we are going to change our behavior, we have to change what we know. We have to be brave enough to acknowledge that what we do know is not enough. And we have to be brave enough to seek out that knowledge. Once we begin to receive that knowledge, we can then carry out the action that is required. And when we speak of action required, we speak of a wide spectrum of possibilities, ranging from tea and bannock conversations or a Timmy's and donut conversation to institutional changes. But action also means we act against silence and acquiescence. To sit and witness racism and not act, to not speak up, is to allow racism to continue. And it is this silence that I believe has been one of the biggest perpetrators of racism. Canadians and Manitobans, friendly Manitobans, our license plate tells us this, that we hold ourselves out and we are actually viewed internationally and nationally as polite and tolerant peoples. But this politeness, this tolerance, is also non-interference, and this has allowed racism to flourish within our city. We have a tremendous opportunity this week to be a leader in moving towards eradicating racism within our city, but not only within the city, but on a provincial level, a national level, and perhaps even an international level. Change requires that we all do our share, and saying, "I'm not a racist," is not good enough. We cannot be spectators. We have to be active participants in combating racism. By not engaging in trying to find solutions, you, by default, become part of the problem. And the change we need is already here. That change is you, and that change is me. You and I. So as we come together this week, let's do so without our preconceived notions about each other. Let's do so without our fear. And let's do something with the commitment and resolve for all within our city and our province, ultimately, to live Mino-Pimatisawan. Miigwech.
Hi, my name is Buffy Handel, and I'm originally from northern Manitoba, residing here in Treaty 1 territory. When I think about multiculturalism and the ability to live in cohesiveness within and amongst one another while respecting all of the diversity that is encompassing here in Treaty 1 territory, We as Indigenous people, we share this opportunity of not only land, but as well as all of the abundance that is offered within and amongst land. Being here in Treaty 1 territory is a very special place to be in, as historically, even on point of contact, prior to point of contact, a lot of the different nations that were in North America all came to the city of Winnipeg. And in the city of Winnipeg, we have a very specific location called the Forks. And at the Forks, it was also known as the meeting place. It was once said that no one actually particularly lived here, but in the springtime, we would all come in different nations through not only what is now known as the United States, but also in Canada, where when the rivers were rising and the lakes were rising, it allowed all of the different nations to actually come through water instead of having to portage. All of the flooding allowed all of the different nations to be able to meet. And being at the Forks here, it allowed all of these nations to come during the springtime to do their trading with ease. When I think about what the Forks stands for, as well as the city of Winnipeg stands for, it's about unity. It's about being able to live together. And I think of a very special word that I was taught, and to me, it is a medicine word. That medicine word is Multiculturalism, which means to all my relations, so simply translated. But to me, that is so much more, because Indigenous First Nations belief is that words aren't so literal. They carry great meaning. This is why I call it a medicine word. Multiculturalism, to all my relations, is in significance to talk about or to depict the greatness behind vibrating at the same frequency as all living things here on Earth, whether that is the water or the air or the rocks or any of the animals, including and encompassing the human beings. When we learn how to vibrate at the same frequency, we do that in a humble way so that we know that we are all equal and that we all come and are created from the same place. And of course, when it is time to go, that we all go to the same place. Multiculturalism.
Hey,
Thank you so much, Loretta, and thanks Buffy and Nick for that incredible performance. Now it's my privilege to introduce our final guest, Keenan Kamanga from the Elmwood Community Resource Center, to talk about his vision for a city without racism.
Thank you all for being here today. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in territory in Treaty 1 and the land in which we are gathering today is the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. My elder often told me, then I'm sure sometime you also heard the same thing. To solve a problem within yourself, you must first recognize that the problem exists, and we must acknowledge it. It's the hardest part of the process of making progress, because we accept that there is something wrong about us and that needs to be fixed. It hurts the ego sometimes. In 2015, when the magazine Maclean claimed that Winnipeg was the most racist city in Canada, a group of high school students gathered together to prove that the statement was wrong. I was among them, refusing to accept that such a thing was happening in our city. But unfortunately, we see it every day and we choose to be blind. A lot of people live in the street and a large majority of them are First Nation. We never ask why, but I'm sure we know the answers. As a black man in this country, my father always told me, and I'm sure many black people also can testify of it, that you must work twice as hard to have the same opportunities. In certain situations, some will speak in that way. I do not see color, but we do not ask you not to see our color. We want you to see it and to respect it just as much as you respect yourself. In the workplace, give us all the same opportunities, not because of our color, but because of our competencies. A wise man told me once, a rich man cannot solve the problem of a poor person, not because he does not have the capacity to do so, but because he does not understand them. Racism, it's a problem that affects all of us, and together we can build a country without it. Merci à tous d'être ici aujourd'hui. Je voudrais commencer par reconnaître que nous sommes sur le territoire du traité 1 et que les terres sur lesquelles nous nous rassemblons aujourd'hui sont les territoires traditionnels des peuples Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota et Dene, ainsi que la partie de la nation métisse. Mes aînés me l'ont souvent dit, et je suis sûr que vous l'avez souvent entendu aussi vous-même. Pour résoudre un problème en vous-même, vous devez d'abord reconnaître que le problème existe. Et c'est la partie la plus difficile dans le processus vers le progrès. Car nous devons reconnaître que quelque chose ne va pas en nous et cela fait parfois mal à l'ego. En 2015, lorsque le magazine Maclean a affirmé que Winnipeg était la ville la plus raciste au Canada, un groupe d'étudiants des écoles secondaires de la ville se sont réunis pour démontrer et prouver que cette affirmation était fausse. J'étais parmi ces étudiants. Refusant d'accepter qu'une telle chose se passait dans notre ville. Malheureusement, nous le voyons tous les jours. Les gens vivent dans la rue, une grande partie d'entre eux sont des peuples des Premières Nations. Et nous ne nous demandons jamais pourquoi, mais nous connaissons certainement la réponse. En tant qu'un homme noir dans ce pays, et je suis certain que beaucoup d'entre nous, noirs, peuvent aussi affirmer la même chose. Mon père comme beaucoup d'autres parents nous l'ont aussi dit, tu dois travailler 2 fois plus difficilement, 2 fois plus dur pour pouvoir avoir les mêmes opportunités. Dans certaines situations d'injustice et de racisme, certains diront que je ne vois pas la couleur. Mais nous ne demandons pas que vous ne puissiez pas voir notre couleur. Nous voulons que vous puissiez la voir et que vous puissiez la respecter, tout autant que vous vous respectez vous-même. Un sage m'a dit une fois, un homme riche ne peut pas résoudre les problèmes d'un homme pauvre, pas parce qu'il n'en a pas les capacités, mais parce qu'il ne les comprend pas. Et le racisme est un problème qui nous affecte tous, et tous nous pouvons bâtir un pays sans racisme. Merci.
Thank you, Keenan, and thanks again to everyone who shared with us today. That brings our gathering to a close. Before we wrap up, I want to encourage you to explore all the events that are going on and take part in as many as you can. Details for this week can be found on the City of Winnipeg's website. And please visit one of the city's public libraries where you can pick up a lawn sign to show your support for challenging racism in our city. Thanks again for being with us. It has been my sincere privilege to be part of this work because it's work that's important to all of us.